that I would say always look at the positive side. I mean, we're trying to convince people to participate in something, so I would go always for the positive side.
Even though that's not the project for this particular initiative, but let me just toss out the question. What would the role of the teacher be in the Close the Gap project?
To teach their students to be independent learners rather than spoon feeding them the information.
So how did they do that?
So, for example, if someone's stuck on like a problem and they just go ask for the answer, but instead of giving the answer, they ask, oh, did you use your resources? Did you ask your classmates? Did you ask your friends? Did you try to look it up online and something like that?
Okay. So when we look here, what is one of the reasons why we separated out countries like the US right now from developing countries with regards to the Close the Gap initiative?
Because US has more resources, I guess.
What kind of resources?
Like technology.
Yeah, and basically we're looking here is if you're going to be an independent learner, and you're, you know, obviously here, if there was other times, you could be going to the library, you can be standing on the street corner asking passerbyers, right?
Yeah.
You're still taking the initiative on that. But by and large, when we take a look at the tools, if we look at the one we mention as an example, it's Khan Academy. So do you think Khan Academy, the use of Khan Academy is facilitated or perhaps made easier in a virtual environment or in a classroom environment?
I feel like virtual.
I actually have a question regarding the Refer Better World project. So since we are kind of depending on COVID getting solved and schools mainly on the developing countries getting back on track, what exactly should we focus on during this meeting?
Something like the Read for a World initiative. But we're going to get into that because we're going to be talking about strategy. We got to get everybody on the same page. What's our strategy? Why are we looking at strategy A versus strategy B? What are the reasons why a particular strategy might be more likely to help us be successful than another strategy? So that's the kind of thing we're going to be talking about here. Because, you know, if we were going out and saying we're going to go to a school and we're going to go and encourage a number of people to participate in to do a readathon, there are, at any given time in the world, there are tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of schools around the world doing a readathon. This is nothing new, nothing special per se. So why do we think here what we are going to do is going to have a bigger impact than those? What's the secret sauce that makes our thoughts different here? So that's the kind of discussion that I'm anticipating we'll have today. That is really where we need to be focusing. Does that what are your thoughts as to what it is that we need to be focusing on at this stage of the game?
I think that it's understanding where we expect to be when we start actually organizing the readathon. So what previous projects came and what we expect to achieve with them. So the basis that we'll already have by then, and then how we will do it.
Mm-hmm. Isn't one of the key things we're looking that we have to do is we have to come up with the list of what we've got to do, right? So in order to come up with a list of those actions that we want to take to be able to bring that readathon about the way we want, to be able to bring it about in a way that is going to impact 100 million people plus, we've got to figure out what's our strategy. Because our plan, our to-do plan, is nothing more than the implementation of our strategy. So we've really got to be able to, before you can each be thinking, what do we need to do? How can we do this? Before you can do that, the key step is to agree. This is the strategy. These are the, when I look here at step 1 and step 2 and step 3 and step 4, these are the things that we need to accomplish in each of those steps. If we're wanting that by the time we get to step 10, we've got 100 million people participating. And we also have to understand what's the question here beyond the 100 million young people that we would have participating. What are the chances that we can go and get maybe 500 million other people that would be participating? Because for every student that's out there reading, we're hoping we have parents and neighbors and people in the community cheering them on. Okay, so I've started recording this. I think we should just jump into this. We'll have to see here this core. How do we? We'll do a little bit of a follow-up and finding out, is it something about the time? Did people forget about the meeting, the reminders that I set out? Maybe I need to send out more reminders earlier on, especially because some people might be sleeping up until and sleep through the meeting and then come, oh yeah, that was a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. If they're in the Eastern time zone or something like that. So what my thoughts were here, as I just mentioned, I'll restart that. The goal for today's meeting, or I wouldn't even say it's the goal for today's meeting. We have to have a recognition of what do we have to do to be successful in doing a project like this. So there's got to be that we have to get a common understanding of what it is we're trying to accomplish, of our strategy for accomplishing it, and then our implementation plan for how we're going to make that happen. Or you could even say our strategy for implementing the strategy. So that's the things that we want to start talking about. And then we'll have to be talking about, okay, how do we spread that understanding, first of all, through the rest of our club mates, and then beyond that here as we grow that, the effort, the team that will work to make that happen. So I'm glad to see Shvikriti. Glad you were able to join us today. I don't see your name. Okay, you can hear me. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Hi. So after listening to you, I've been thinking that what can be the very first step for us to kind of guarantee an outreach, a reaction that we are looking for. And the only thing that comes to mind is a very strong online community, considering that we are planning to go worldwide, right? So for us to do that, we have already started doing it in like the club that is already existing, our e-club. But for a better outreach, we need to somehow start a community which is strong, which has a strong sense of accountability, so that we're not missing out, or we're not just keeping on reminding them of our goals. I'm just thinking in terms of how do we find these people, not just online, but to just connect them all in a way that we're all together and are working towards what we really believe in, right? So for that, I think maybe if we start a LinkedIn page and start posting regularly, not just about our initiative, but also if we are going to do a readathon, then maybe probably about the books that we want to recommend and why we want to do that, or something along along those lines. So these are very fresh thoughts. They're not very well fleshed out. So uh, I'm not elaborating in the right manner, but yeah, that's just what is going on in my head right now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rakiti. Before I say anything to that, I really want to hear others. So can we go around? Leah, you've talked, Shrakiti. Can we go around here and just have Samuel and Vesha, Jerica, if each of you could just say a couple of introductory words here to what we're trying to accomplish here.
So I want to reply to what Cmte said. I feel like that's a pretty good idea because it will help us to spread our words more than it rather is already. And I really like the idea of posting some books on the LinkedIn page as well, because our main goal is readathon and everything. So it will be nice to post some books information too.
Samuel, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I really want to say something, but where I am, there's a lot of money. So I will say it when I get to a site place. But all the same, it's a good initiative and it's a great idea.
Okay, Samuel, I'm sorry here, but your connection is poor. We're not really understanding you. Okay, Samuel, maybe you could put in the chat if you've got some thoughts and you're not able to voice them here. Maybe you could just put a couple of your thoughts in the chat. Jerica, wait a minute. I saw you were driving. I think don't be writing anything in the chat while you're driving. Okay, drive safely. Jerica.
Yes.
Your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts is I really agree. I hope you guys can hear me pretty clear. One of the most important components to what we're doing is, what we're discussing right now. And I think it's vital.
Okay, I just want to say a couple of words because Shrakiti brought up a couple of thoughts. One of the thoughts here is what happens. Let's, I hear this a lot here. Well, what books are they going to read? What books do we want them to read? And I think here about the story. Let me see. I have a book. Is buried under my green screen back there somewhere, from a former marketing executive from Microsoft who went hiking in the Himalayas and in Nepal. And along the way, he passed villages and he passed schools. And when he went into the schools there, he was surprised that he would find something. In some schools, he found like there was a glass door on a little cabinet where there was like 4 or 5 books in it, and the cabinet was locked. In other words, the only books they had in the school were so precious to the school they wouldn't let anybody touch them. So those kids had never touched a book, and these books weren't necessarily suitable for kids because these are books that hikers happen to have left behind. And so some of them had very adult topics and things like this, but it was a book. So he started a program. He caught a hold of his father back in the States, who started a book drive, and then they started building libraries and building schools in remote villages. But the bottom line is there's a lot of places that might not have any books. The other thing here is what happens when you go and say, here's a list. Here's the 10 books we want you to read. What does that do to the total number? We're out there wanting to talk to 100 million kids. And of those total number of kids, if you come and say, I want you to read this book, that book, and that book, what do you think happens to the number of kids that actually participate?
I think.
Oh, sorry, you could go.
Go, Ramesha.
No, it's fine. You could go.
I think it will be reduced the number because either they don't have access to those books, or they may feel it's too hard to read, or I don't know, it's not very, they would all be reading the same story, and that's not the main goal. We could put recommendations of books in case they would like, they don't have any ideas, but not necessarily, okay, read this book, and that book, because it's very limiting.
Yeah, I almost guarantee you, anytime you try to tell, just picture a teacher in a classroom trying to get all the students to read a particular book. Some kids are going to just say, I don't like that book. I don't care. Or the teacher's trying to force me to do this or trying to force me to do that. Any attempt to go and channel that reading is going to reduce the number, the amount of reading that gets done. In some places in developing countries, when I think of rural India, you've got villages in rural India, let's face it, where there's not a lot to read. In fact, what you might be going and encouraging people to read, go to the supermarket and read the cereal boxes, if there is that, or billboards on the street side, or pick up a magazine or whatever. In other words, we want to cast the net as far as possible. So to the degree we can go and just say, just read. We don't care what you read, as long as you read something. And in fact, I'll go a step further, because in the pilot we did here in the United States, there was, of the first grade students, a share of those first grade students that were just in the process of learning. They really couldn't read yet. And that school counted if somebody would read to that student. In other words, helping that student learn to read, or just helping them understand words in a verbal sense. They counted that. So, you know, it's a mixed bag, but I think strategically that the more we don't get engaged, I would like to go out there and suggest that students perhaps read the United Nations, Declaration, the Human Rights Declaration. That would be something here that perhaps would be very valuable to read. I don't know how well second graders and third graders are perhaps equipped for that level of writing, but it doesn't hurt for us to make recommendations. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to encourage a teacher to come in here and say, here's the books. Even if you have the books, you have to read those books, because a certain number of the kids are not going to engage in that. Jerica, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just going back to what I was saying earlier, I think that, you know, it's vital what we're speaking about right now, because I feel as though, you know, amongst the members, a lot of things aren't clear about the how-tos. And I think everybody kind of wants like this itemized checklist. And it's important that we define the things that we can say for sure, you know, these are the staples of the framework of what we're doing. And this is where the, you know, instructors or the teachers or professors have freedom to to input some, you know, some of what they have planned for a lesson plan or books or materials that they have planned for their particular student body. So I think it's important what we're talking about today, because as in different committees, as we comb out material to make everything streamlined and understood, this is really important that the different components are completely understood across the group.
Thank you. That is important. The key thing we're trying to do here is we have to increase the number of people that are spreading the word. And to increase the number of people spreading the word, we have to increase the number of people who totally understand it, because we don't want to go out and have person A describe, oh, we got this brand new initiative and this is how it works. And we got somebody else that's going out and saying to somebody, here's this great initiative and this is how it works. And they describe differently what the first person describes. And they describe differently why those items are important. Because when the people they're talking to talk to one another about, oh, there's this great new thing, they get confused because they're hearing different stories from different people. So what my wish is here, my goal is that each of you develop this shared understanding of this initiative to the degree that you can all go out and start recruiting additional people to supporters and so forth, so that that we can grow the overall effort. So you need to all understand what this initiative is, as if it was your idea. And I'm proof that you can do it, because it's not my idea. I think I've told everyone this was a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds that came up with this idea. So, you know, but I hope everybody can agree it's really, really important to understand that. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions. I was going to put a questionnaire together, and I think I'll probably still do it for the broader group. But I would like to ask a couple of questions here. And I would really like you guys to answer them. Whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't make any difference. Just be engaged and participate. One, what are the main goals? What are the main goals we're trying to accomplish here with this readathon, this Read for a Better World?
I would say for me at least, there are 3 more main goals. If you go from more superficial to the more concrete ones, we have improving the reading skills, of course, then starting to establish those connections and contacts with the schools, because they will remain loyal to Rotaries and our cause and the idea, so they are more likely to participate in future projects. And then it's to get that momentum of the feeling, like you said already a lot of times, of how it feels to change someone's life. And so they will want to pursue that and keep that feeling going. And so they'll participate in even more projects or start their own, or continue and ensure the continuance of these initiatives that we are now arranging. And those would be the 3 that I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Who's next?
Yeah, I agree with her. I feel like another important thing is introducing the concept of reading, because I feel like not all the countries in this world know what exactly reading is. So I feel like introducing that, how it plays a vital role in our education.
Okay, and anything else? So,
sorry. So before I answer that question, there are a lot of other questions that are coming to my mind, and if am I audible? Okay. So first of all, if we are really trying to, we really just want people to start reading, even if it's billboards, as you explained, then I get because I live in India, right? And we have so many regional languages and so many regional stuff going on, then I start to wonder that whether it is English that we're targeting to spread. Because again, no, it's not.
Okay.
No, because I'm just wondering, because if it's English, then I don't think that would be possible here. But if it's not English, then how are we trying to reach out? Again, how do we reach out to people who are not even speaking are speaking English in the first place to start reading? And what is a target group? Who are we targeting here? Again, if we have a target age group, then there is a better way for us to kind of go to that targeted age group, considering that there is a lot more difference between between kids aging 10 and 12. I know that from my own life. So if I'm 10, then I'm playing something, then I have a different way of thinking about things, and then different things motivate me. So in a way, I'm trying to paint this picture that maybe if I'm 10, then a way to motivate me to read is different than maybe if I'm 12 or 13. And then when I think about it, I start to question that how do we even check if our initiative is going in the right manner, or if we are having an effect as I can't seem to think of the right word here. But what I'm trying to say is, how do we check that kids have started reading billboards and newspapers or whatever things that they have in front of them? So when I was thinking about that, I felt like it's better that we maybe we should start setting goals to our initiative, in terms that maybe once we start targeting it in a better, like giving it bigger goals, and then getting those converting those bigger goals into smaller steps, in that way we will be able to have a better grasp of the situation. What I'm trying to say here is that maybe if we start with a bigger goal, where we say that we will start by recommending not a specific group, a specific book, but maybe a type of book that we want people to read. And in those ways, if we start building a community like that, it will be better for us to step in the second goal, which may be getting to those regional places that we wanted to go in the first place. And then from there, maybe we can reach out to more, because I personally feel that this will require a lot of on-ground people to actually help these reading process to go forward. So for that, I think we need to have a solid we have to have results in hand for people to feel motivated, right? So if we have broader goals accomplished, then it will provide as an initiative, it will provide probably as a motivating factor for people to work forward. So yeah.
Shakiti, question. Just some thoughts, some ideas from you. How do you think we might reach the target audience here to encourage? If we're looking, if we look out there and we have 100% of students, you're going to get some areas in the world where you're going to get a very high percentage of young people that will be participating, and you're going to get other parts of the world where you get very few people participating. So if we want to turn around and get that average of 10% of all young people around the world participating in this, what are your thoughts about the best way to reach those young people to get them engaged in reading?
I will speak from personal experience. So I, for a very long time, worked on an on-ground project, and it was a youth build project. So there were a lot of young people involved. And in that project, I was basically working on grounds in slum areas near it's near my it's in Delhi in itself. It has Rohingya community, which are basically migrants settled from not just like they were kicked off from their country, so they were settled here, but there were a lot other communities here. So not just migrants from outside India, but in India itself, because we have a lot of poverty in India. So like we have stuff going on, right? So what we were trying to do was we were trying to impart peace-based education in those kids. So what I'm trying to say is that maybe if we can connect all these on ground initiatives that I know are a lot, like there are already a lot of such initiatives working, and if we provide them with a solid plan on how to go about things, then maybe with the help of collaborations, because that is the answer that comes to me again, collaborations. So if we can collaborate, then maybe we can accomplish our goals.
Mm-hmm. How many children, let's say between the ages of 6 and 14, are there in Delhi? Roughly.
I can't speak in numbers, but I can say, what I can say is that if we are targeting those kids who do not necessarily have all the necessities or even a school to go to, then I can tell you for sure that the number will be higher as we go down. So the younger kids will be more as compared to the older kids, because I have realized, or it's a thing here, that kids are put to work very early. So if there are a lot of kids in a family, the older kids are helping their parents earn some money. And so the thing here is that if the more the merrier, as they say, but they use that in a very wrong sense, where they basically, if a kid turns 10, he's trying to sell, he's probably becoming a local vendor and he's trying to sell something, or maybe he's picking trash, or those are certain ways, certain jobs that don't require an age requirement, but definitely steal away from their time to build up a skill for as small a skill as reading, which is a very essential skill for them to move on in their lives. But then again, on that point, I have noticed that there are a lot more younger kids, because the older ones are in one way or another involved in such activities, if they're not going to school.
Right. Okay. Let me hear Jerrica before I say anything. Jerrica, you want to, or Anvesha, either of you want to add something here?
I was just saying you were, oh, sorry, you could go.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I was just saying how you were asking how many children between the age of 16 and 14 in Delhi aren't in school. So I just made a quick search, and it says, survey finds that 11,000 children between 6 and 14 aren't in school, either because they have dropped out of school already or because they never enrolled in one in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So that's how many are not in school?
Yeah.
Okay. Jerrica.
Well, to kind of touch on the first questions that were asked about material, that's why it's important that we keep in mind the merger between how we do things and the instructors and the professors, because we are targeting all, everyone around the world. It's important that we remember that demographics and age groups will vary, and vulnerable age groups will vary depending on the region of the world that we're in. So that's why it's really important that our initiative is giving the vision. Our initiative is giving the end goal and saying that this is possible if you are to do A, B, C, D. And so we give the framework, but there's also that small bit of freedom in the lesson plan, so that it's pliable, and it can be applicable to multiple age groups and different need basis depending on the region of the world that we're serving.
Okay, I'd like to go back here, because there's a lot of material out there, and we've got the Read for a Better World website, readforabetterworld.org. There's a lot of papers written out there. And I want to go back just to the original idea that the students, those that primary school students had when they came up with this idea. Their idea was that the students who are already in school, but some of whom might not be reading as well as others, that they would read, hold this readathon, and they would use that, the readathon, to get people to sponsor them, to make a donation for every hour that they would read, to make a small donation. And that money would be used to be able to fund providing school, enabling some of those poorest children, Shrikiti, that you were talking about, enabling them to go to school and be fed and have food in school, to make up for the fact that they weren't out there having to scrounge and spend their time to forage for food, or to beg for money or food. So that's the basic premise of the idea, that we focus on the children who are in school to participate in the readathon, and use that as a vehicle for raising money, among other things. So does that change a little bit, Shrikiti, your thoughts or understanding of this project?
Yes, it does, because the food is a big problem here. So there are midday meal. It's a scheme by the government where kids are given free meals in schools, and it started out, I think, because they just wanted kids to get education, and food became this motivating factor, which really, we saw an increase in numbers of kids going to school to just get those meals. So that is one thing that happens. But then if we do talk about raising funds through schools, there are a lot of factors that come into play. Again, if we're talking about government schools, because they already have this midday meal happening, I don't think they will be willing to spend more money on it, because even though there are government schools that provide midday meals, there are a lot of government schools which have really comparatively very low, what do we call it, the money you pay to go to school,
School fees.
Fees, thank you. So school fees is comparatively lower. So, and because in India, private schools are very much popular, and there are more, it's considered that your kid will get a better education if he's enrolled in a private school. So there is this whole idea. But even in private school, government has regulated a certain percentage of seats that should be given to those kids who are probably belong to not that well-off families. Yep. So I feel that implementing the idea in school is something which I will have to definitely go on and check about the laws, because I think that will create a lot of problem here.
Shrikita, let me back off a step on that as well, because if we look at the way readathons typically work, there's two kinds. There's anythons, whether it's a bike-a-thon, an exercise-a-thon, a walk-a-thon. There's a lot of these, and the intention of most a-thons is fundraising. So that people go and say, I was visiting a Rotary Club in Germany, for example, and they were gathering a bunch of members of different clubs, and they were all going to go down to the Alps, and they were getting sponsors who would pay for every kilometer they hiked, or every meter they hiked in altitude, one of those like that, people would make a pledge. Or if I think of the multiple sclerosis bike-a-thon, that's something that's very popular here in the United States. I don't know about elsewhere. People on a certain day of the year, they organize these bike-a-thons everywhere. And the people go out and get people to agree that for every kilometer they bike, or every mile they bike, that those people will make a donation. And these The MS raises literally hundreds of millions of dollars every year doing those bike-a-thons. So that's the general gist of the a-thons. And then you've got major organizations that come along and they want to encourage a lot of local donations. So they say here, whatever you can get somebody to pledge locally, I'll match it. So that if, for example, maybe a Gates Foundation might come out and say, somebody's doing some kind of an a-thon to raise money to fight malaria. And for every local dollar you raise, they'll match it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Just think here of Rotary, their fundraising drive for polio the last 3 years. The Gates Foundation says they would match that up to, was it $100 million or $300 million? I can't remember, per year for 3 years in a row. So that's the gist. So imagine it this way. When we say raise the money, let's just imagine Bill Gates came along and he said, for every hour a child reads in Delhi during a particular month, that the Gates Foundation will make a donation of 50 cents or $1, let's just say, so we keep it a round number, or rupee or whatever value of some value of money. That's the kind of motivation, if you would, or dynamic that we are thinking about.
Even though I understand that, and I feel that a donation drive will really work here, specifically talking about the Rotary donation drives that I've been a part of, they are a big, huge success, right? Even then I guess, then now I have another question. I'm so sorry, I'm just asking all these questions today, but can you please tell me what we will do with that money, considering that the first idea was that we will be providing kids with who are not as well off as other kids, to give them food so that they don't have to go and work extra for food or something. So since that is something that we've already ruled out, that cannot be possibly done in the government schools here, and or if I think about the private schools, then again I feel like that is all that's been covered, I think. Again, that I have to check. But then what will we do of all the donations that we do get? Because okay. I feel like donations are something that we will get somehow.
Yes. So here, the United Nations has identified there is, at least this last year, beginning of last year, so it was actually 2019 was the last number I had seen. There were 67 million children, primary school age children in the world, who were not in school due to hunger or extreme poverty. And that means the inability to pay fees or whatever. So that's right off the bat a particular audience that would be able to be helped. But it varies, as you're mentioning, it varies from place to place. One has to take a look and see what is it going to take to get, because the goal, the exchange, if you would, that those original kids came up with was, we will go out and we'll do some reading so that we can get people to donate some money, and that money will be used to get kids who are of primary age, who are not in school, into school. That's the purpose. So there are places where they're perhaps in school more. If we take a look and we can say, well, why should a kid in Germany, or why should a kid in the United States or Canada, why should they participate in this here? All their kids are in school. So, but the thing about it is the idea of solidarity, of going and saying, hey, there are some children in the world who are worse off than we are, and we can contribute to helping them have a better life. I can tell you from the pilot we did in one particular school, I'm thinking of 70 kids participated. Those kids raised enough money. They took in Malawi, Africa, they're sitting here in the United States, and they went and enabled 250 street kids from Malawi, Malawi, Africa, to be able to go to school, and they fed them for an entire year, just from 2 weeks of a readathon there. Now, granted, in the United States, the money a child raises here is very different than what it costs for a child in Malawi, Africa. It turns out that the money that one child in the United States raised in 2 weeks fed 3 children in Malawi for a whole year. So you've got that kind of a dynamic. But because our goal is to motivate participation, there's the potential of saying here, hey, maybe we want to say 50% of those funds raised can be used in the local school. That stays in the local school, and the local school can decide what they want to do with it. They can decide, hey, we've got problems of our own in our own school. We're lacking books, perhaps. Let's go and we'll take some of that money and use it to get books. But let's say a wealthy private school in Delhi, though that school, those kids might decide, no, we're going to help that to go to a local slum area, a school in a local slum area in Delhi, and we're going to help those kids be able to have a chance for a better education. That gets the kids thinking about, okay, how can we deploy these funds for a way that makes sense? And this gets back to my original question, what's the goal? And I want to come back to that here, because the goals were defined originally. There were 3. So Leah was right, and she got 3, but they were slightly different. The one where these 9 and 10-year-old kids, when they went to their headmaster with the idea, they said, you know, we have a lot of classmates in our school that they are not good readers. Even if they're in maybe the 2nd or 3rd or 4th grade, they're not good readers. Maybe their parents at home can't read, so there's nobody to help them read. There's no books at their home, nothing to read in their homes. Maybe it's their parents might not even speak English, so that makes it even more difficult for them to learn the language, let alone being able to read the language. So whatever the reason was, they said, one of our first goals is we want to encourage our classmates who are weak readers to become better readers. And you become better readers through practice. So if we can come out there and have an initiative that creates an excitement here and almost like a little competition. Oh, I've read 15 hours so far this month. How many hours have you read? And by putting it up on the board there so everybody can see how many hours that they read. It's not how many books, because somebody might read twice as fast as somebody else. It's encouraging how many hours did you put into reading. That was goal 1. The second goal was the raising of money. And the reason they said, you know, we heard about these kids around the world who are so poor, they have to spend all day just trying to get enough food to live for one more day. Their whole existence is begging, foraging for food on the dumps, wherever they can get it, stealing, or having to work just so that they can get get some food to live for another day. So that was their original 2 goals. As the discussions took place, and I've had a lot of discussions with people at the United Nations on this. First of all, backing up to that food piece, there are a lot of studies out there that show that even poor families, very poor families, if they have the option here that they're sending out their kids to beg, steal, forage for food, that if somebody will come along and say, I will feed that child, that's a mouth that family doesn't have to worry about feeding, that they're very often happy to send those kids to school. So that's part of it. Statistically, there's a lot of studies that show that providing, if it's a child that has no access to food in a family or a street child, that food in school does work. And as you're saying, in India, in many places, it's already being used. The third piece here is the recognition that if we can get those students working, if we can go and create a competitive feeling that, okay, which class in this school has the highest average number of hours read per student, so that we can sort of get a little competition going in there, so that the teacher's able to go and say, hey, you know what? We've got here, we're already up to 11 and a half hours read this month on average for our class here. The other class down the hall, they've only got 10 hours so far. We're ahead. Or they might come out and say, oh, we've got 11 and a half hours average read so far. The class down the hall, they're at 12 hours. We can catch them. Come on, just put in a little more effort and we'll catch them and we'll be better than they are. So that kind of a psychology that came to fore in the discussions. And then finally, the idea is if you can get the kids doing that, first of all, from that competitive idea, but the second idea we said is in every classroom to be able to go and have a chart. If we can look at the overall world situation in terms of number of children in the world that can't go to school because of hunger, let's say. And you know, when you're doing fundraising, and if you've maybe seen it in Rotary, a lot of places they'll put like a thermometer on a wall or on a building, and it says, this is our goal. Our goal is 100% on the thermometer, and we're at 40%, and next week we're at 50%, and then we're at 60%, and so forth. But instead of that, to be able to put a thermometer on the wall in the classroom where the kids keep track of how many lives have I changed? Have we changed as a class? So if the class goes and says, you know, okay, we've read the number of hours that we've read so far, will raise so many dollars. And according to the United Nations, that number of dollars, that if we can contribute that number of dollars, will have impacted that number of lives, so that we can go and get these students and announce in advance that the local Rotary clubs, whatever, there's going to be an award ceremony at the end of this readathon. And every child that participates in that readathon is going to get a certificate from the United Nations declaring them to be a global citizen hero. And they might get a t-shirt saying they're a hero, or a wristband saying they're a hero, or whatever. And the idea here is that we really treat them as such. The children that participated in that pilot, I can tell you, I went and saw them the next school year, okay? That was 10 months after they did that readathon. And those kids who participated were still walking around with their heads in the clouds. We're heroes. We're heroes. They ended up getting here from a Time Magazine 100 Most Influential, a CNN Hero of the Year award winner, a United Nations ambassador, the mayor of their city, all came to them and issued them certificates saying, you're a hero. And everywhere they went after that, if they were wearing something that showed they were part of that, people around the community all were going here, oh, wow, Mr. Hero, Mrs. Hero, Miss Hero, and treated them as heroes. And that created here a lot of envy among the kids who didn't participate to say, hey, I want that treatment too. Oh, when's the next one? I want to participate in that next one. So this is in the end of the day, we're talking about children. There's a lot of psychology that goes into that. So that the idea then is the three goals: help promote literacy, promote reading, improve the reading skills of the kids who get involved simply because of practice. There's for many, many children in the world to read 20 hours in a month. If you're in a primary school, That might be more hours than that child has read in their whole lives so far. The second piece is raising funds to increase the number of children who can get a quality education, primary school children. We want to get that number of primary school children, aged children around the world who are not in school for whatever the reason is. We want to get that down to 0. And the third reason is to have an excuse to be able to declare the participating students to be global citizen heroes, so we can get them to really feel good about themselves for having done something good and be desirous of doing more things good, and creating jealousies and envy among the people, the kids who are not being treated that way, to want to do that and participate the next time. And I can tell you, it's not just the kids. The parents of the kids who were awarded those certificates were even more proud than the kids were. The parents were going around telling everybody else, my kid did this and my kid did that. And it's very interesting here when we had talks. One of the first young people that we talked to about this was a young girl in Nepal. And she mentioned how the kids in her community are so poor that none of them have ever even dreamed that they could contribute to helping somebody else. They never could imagine. They don't have anything to donate, to share. And by going and saying here that we are going to have somebody else will donate $1 for every hour you read, we just gave that poor child something of value. They've never had anything in their lives that was valuable, that was worth anything. And we just created something of value. 1 hour of their time reading is now worth something. It's worth what that other person will donate in their name. So that, when we look at the goals, those 3 goals, to improve literacy, to raise funds to reduce the number of children not in school around the world due to hunger or poverty, and 3, to have an excuse to be able to declare the participating children to be global citizen heroes in a way that will encourage them to want to do more heroic things going forward in their lives. So does that make sense? Shakita, especially for you, because
Yes.
I think some of that was new to you.
Yes. So after all the things that you've just said, I have a lot more clarity, and I do know what to research on, because I do want to do that on the side. So I know what to read on now, and so I can give better inputs in the next meeting for sure.
Okay, that's great. Now, one of the things here, I had a couple of other questions. I'm going to just jump through those because the origin, as I said, was these 9 and 10-year-olds who came up with that original idea on that. Myself and another Rotarian, we just went to the school and we just told these kids, dare to be great, dare to go out there and do something fantastic. And that was their idea. They came back about 4 or 5 weeks later to their headmaster, and that was their idea. So then the next thing here, though, is our strategy for making it happen, our strategy for getting 100+ millions of kids. And I want to back off because some of you, I don't think, know the story of how did we get from one elementary school kids coming up with this idea to this idea of going after 100 million kids around the world. And what happened on that was, I mentioned that we had this big award ceremony with the United Nations ambassador and the CNN Hero of the Year award winner and Time Magazine 100 Most Influential, all those people, and the mayor coming on these kids saying, you're heroes, you're heroes, you're heroes. About a month after that happened, I was the chaperone on the bus of Interact students going to our annual convention. And I just mentioned to them, because it was only a month earlier we had that big award ceremony, And I just mentioned it to these students on the bus. And a group of the students are going, and they said, wow, 70 kids, 70 students could so dramatically change the lives of 250 of the world's poorest children. Maybe they even saved the lives of some of those kids, which we know they did, because we know the rate of death due to hunger among children in the world. It's one every less than 5 seconds. Less than 5 seconds, a child dies of hunger in the world. So they said, if 70 kids could do that, imagine if we could. And I'm thinking they're about to say, and we could do the same thing. But they didn't. They said, imagine if we could get 70 million kids to participate in a readathon. And out of that idea grew, then somebody said, 70 million students, that's only 5% of the students out there. That shouldn't be that hard. And out of that grew a video, and it spread around to, I think, 40 countries. Young people said, hey, yeah, I want to be part of that. And that's where that grew out of, and it got refined here as they looked at age groups and this and that. And it ended up, because of everybody likes round numbers, it ended up going to 100 million here and that grew out of discussions with some ambassadors and other people at the United Nations, when they were asked to estimate what percentage of the kids do they believe that would participate under various scenarios. So that, so far to the origin. My next question is, though, well, what's the strategy? How do we plan to mobilize to get that 100 million plus young people participating in a readathon? So that's the question I'm tossing to you guys right now. What's the plan? How do we think we can get 10%, 1 out of every 10 children in primary and lower secondary school in the world to participate in such a readathon for a period of a month? And Shakita, I want to start with you because of the fact that a lot of this is new to you. How do you think we can get 1 out of every 10 children in the world participating in the readathon?
So again, the first thing comes down to the community. If we have people from all around the world, and then we have those people taking accountability and feeling, as you say a lot, that it is their idea, and so if they start with that feeling, I think that will be a step 1. And from there, if we start going to the local interact clubs and giving them the idea of bookathon, and getting, if we even get a few schools to participate, that will be a start. So I think that's what we can do.
Okay, anybody else?
I feel like publicity and emotional appeal is a big thing, because if we make like some sort of videos to show like you said, with just like facts, like, oh, every 1 children in 5 seconds die because of hunger, and if you do this, you will help this many people and stuff like that. If we could create that emotional video and encourage schools to show it in their classes, maybe that could attract more students to participate in the readathon and, change lives.
Let me, when you're 7 years old, when you're 8 years old, what are some of the things that guide you to do something?
Prizes?
Maybe you're going out there and saying, Mom, buy that cereal box. That's got a neat little toy in it, right? Type of thing. And yeah, maybe some of that is this. But again, on the prizes and things like that, you might find one here and you might find one there. But if I was to go here and said, I want to go and get a high percentage of kids in this community to participate, do you think you can do that without the teachers telling the students to do it?
No, actually, what I was going to reply to your question is, it may seem counterintuitive, but I don't think our goal is to persuade the students. What we need to do is persuade those who will pledge the money and the parents and teachers, because those are the ones that are going to motivate the students. The students will just want, you know, to get to become heroes, and they can only become heroes if the pledgers donate the money. So we need to persuade the pledgers, and then they will only participate if the teachers and the parents are persuaded to persuade them.
Right. And that's probably not going to happen here unless those kids even know about it. And those kids don't necessarily, when you're 7 and 8 years old, I don't know how much time you spent saying, Mom, turn the TV on. The news is on now. Right? So kids are, it's not here when, Mom, go get the newspaper. I want to see what's in the news today. Right? That's not your typical 7, 8-year-old behavior. Mostly here, 7 and 8-year-olds do what they're told. So the key thing we're looking at here is to get the teachers to go and tell their students, okay, class, this month we're going to participate in X. But we're in a competition with that class down the hall. Or, you know, and you know what, this guy's going to go and donate money for every hour you read. So, but the teacher is the conduit of information. The parents, yes. But again, how many of the parents of children in schools, especially children who are weak readers, we said the parents may not read, they may not speak that language. So the parents don't hear the news. And I can tell you, it's right now one of the I don't know if it's a secret or it's a very public secret about marketing. About marketing, it's very hard to reach audiences today. 100 years ago, everybody in a town all read the same newspaper, or they all heard, because the ones who read the newspaper talked to all their neighbors, and everybody got the same message. So if you wanted to get a message, that was a great way to get the message. Back in the 1950s and the 1960s, when there was only a small number of TV channels and TV shows, it was very effective to advertise on those TVs, because everybody got it, because certain time of the evening, everybody was stuck in front of their TV sets watching all the same channels. Or if there was only a small number of channels, I don't know if any of you have ever noticed, we used to have 3 main channels here in the United States. And just before Christmas time here, there's a big push to sell cars. Just before the end of the year, they were giving big discounts. And it was interesting to note that a lot of times that if you switch the channel, if there was a commercial on and you flip the channel, the same commercial was showing on all 3 channels, or at least the same company's advertisement. And there's a reason for that. That's very, very deliberate. They want to make sure you didn't miss that, their ads. So no matter where you looked at that point in time, you saw it. This is also a reason why in the advertising industry, if you've got a budget of $10 million or $12 million, you don't go out and say, I'm going to spend $1 million every month for my budget. What you do is you pick a couple of times and you consolidate all your advertising money into a small window, so that you have it in every magazine, every newspaper, every TV, every radio station. They're getting bombarded, because there's a psychological study to that. The more times a message gets heard, the more effective it is. So this is why you'll get bombarded with messages at a certain point in time in the year. So there's a lot of psychology to all of this. And the same thing applies to us. And if we go and say, okay, the secret here, we can't get to the parents. Right now, it's amazing how many companies, the way they get to the parents is they make ads to the children. Because the children, we know where we can get them. We know what they watch. They have a much narrower spectrum. They're not out. I'm not talking teenagers. I'm talking here primary and lower secondary students. They are not out surfing 500 internet channels and having a very fragmented approach. So it's a lot easier to reach children with a message that you're actually wanting them to bring to the parents. So that there's, again, a lot of psychology to that. So teachers become a very powerful conduit of information because we know where they're at. We don't know where parents are at anymore. They're all over the place today here in the way they work. They're all over the place in terms of how they watch or what they watch. That's why we have the fragmented society on the internet, and we've got all these bubbles where everybody's just watching the same things that their friends watch and so forth. So the idea here is to get to those teachers, but there's a problem. So we could go out and advertise. We could go out and advertise, teachers, please participate. And we could go out and try to get the word to all the teachers. But in a lot of countries, how much latitude do teachers have regarding what they do in the classroom? There are an awful lot of countries where they are given, the individual teacher has no authority to go and say, we're going to run a readathon, or we're going to do this. They have to follow a very strict curriculum that might be put out by the local school district. And in a lot of countries, though, is put out by the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education says, if it's Tuesday, this is what you're supposed to do if it's Tuesday. So if we want to really get those teachers to participate, it would really be very valuable for us to be able to get the ministers of education to go and call for that participation. Soam, you joined us a little late, and so you've been here for that part of the discussion. What are your thoughts on that, of going and saying, hey, our goal should be to get ministers of education, superintendents of schools, state secretaries of education, national education secretaries of education, if we can get them calling for participation in this readathon as the audience that we're out to go and influence, rather than only going out to the mass media and trying to recruit volunteer participants that way. Okay, I'm going to take into consideration. Okay, so Soam's not in a place where he can speak at this moment. So, do we see how big a strategic point that is? Right, because I get the impression from what Sukriti said earlier. There's, and I saw it from dealing with other groups of young people, there's a thought here, let's go out to social media, let's go and encourage kids to participate. And I can tell you here, my gut feel right now says, if you could get 1% of 1% to participate, 1 out of 10,000 kids to participate, that's probably going to be a lot to be able to get participation in that approach. Where if you're trying to saturate and blanket the participation, then the idea here is we need those teachers to be the ones that push it. If for no other reason, who's going to administer? Who's going to moderate? Who's going to capture the number of hours read? Who's going to report them if you don't have the teachers doing that? Okay, so this is a big selling point. We just see here that here we've asked everybody in this committee to to read all the materials out there thus far about this this initiative, and yet a lot of people feel, let's just contact the schools. Let's just contact the schools individually from the bottom up. And it's very difficult to even conceive that we would be able to reach 10% of the schools in the world. And it's not 10% of the schools in the world, because you're going to have places that the participation rate is going to be much lower than others. So we really need to be able to reach, in some countries, 40 to 50% of the students, which can only be accomplished by reaching 40 to 50% of the teachers, which can only be reached if we can get 40 to 50% of the schools to participate as a school, to have the schools say, hey, this is a project we're doing this month. And the likelihood that a school administrator is going to make a big deal on their own out of something is not very high. So they want the backing of that superintendent, and they want the backing of the ministers of education to say, if the minister of education says, do this, and the teacher says, oh my God, I've always been looking for something that's going to encourage my students to read, they're going to love to do it. But the education business is not a very risk open segment of the population. Teachers and administrators are very risk averse. They don't like to go out on a limb and do things different on their own, because their experiences, when they do something different, if they succeed, everybody just says you did your job. But if they fail, they really get whacked hard. So that's the whole dynamic does not encourage them to go out and take risks. So we've got to go and build up that backing. So what that really says from our strategy, what do you think our strategy needs to be because of that? And Vesha, what are your thoughts? What our strategy needs to be if our goal here is to go and motivate school headmasters or principals to drive the readathon in their schools, and we need to get, in some countries, 30, 40, 50% of the schools participating?
I'm sorry, I missed like the middle section because my laptop just shut down, so I couldn't hear what you said before.
Gotcha. Okay. Leah, why don't you start us off then?
Yeah, as I said, I think it's going to those influencers for the donations. And yeah, I agree that in a large part of the country's parents may not be the goal, but teachers, and showing them why they should do it, what will happen if they do it, making the process very simple so that they don't have any excuses not to do it. And I would also say to get the schools involved and reach them, I would say using the contact lists more or less that we have from the debate and the Close the Gap, because we will already have by that point the context done. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, because of shortness of time, we're already in almost an hour and a half into this session, and I don't want to hold you guys too much longer. And I think here, for those that were on the call, we've made a couple of put a couple of breakthrough ideas on the table, or a couple of key ideas that are important for us to think about. But I just want to bring out here the money, the donation part. Let's take that off the table. Would a readathon be of value to a school, even without the idea that there's fundraising involved? Just as a competition here, Class A to Class B, who can read the most hours next month, right? Teachers are looking for excuses or ways to get their kids to read, right? So what is now, when you look here from the perspective of money, there's a very interesting thing. There's two sides to the money pledge aspect of the readathon. Any thoughts as to what those two might be? Jerica, you've been quiet for a long time here. Did I put her to sleep? Okay, and Visha. Oh, okay. She's at work, so she can't speak. Okay, and Visha, what are your thoughts that there are two very different sides as to what the money part of a readathon brings to the mix? The why would you want to have people donate money for a readathon?
That's actually a pretty hard question, but maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe like people, well, if they see the positive side and the good cause where the money is going, maybe they will want to participate.
That's the reason why they might want to participate. But from the people here that might want to be organizing a readathon, what is their motivations, if you would, for encouraging donations? Two very, very different thoughts to that.
I'm not actually sure about that.
Okay. Well, one of them obvious is if you want to raise money, that there's a big value here, that if you want to raise money, that's the reason why you want to get donations. But there's another reason. If you're the teacher and your goal is to get the kids to read as many hours as possible, what does that pledge, that donation pledge, what's the impact that has on a student who's reading?
Well, it will probably have a positive impact because they're like, oh, if I read this, I'm helping to gain money that will go towards a good cause. So it will encourage them to read more.
Right. So it's an incentive, right?
Yeah.
You actually see there. Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
I would say it's also a more tangible way of having a notion of how far they've gone.
Yeah, but the key thing here is the donation here. If I'm a teacher and want to go and encourage my kids to read, and my thought was do a readathon, the more I can get in donation pledges, the more that's going to motivate my students to want to read more. And in fact, some people come out there and say, well, I'll give you, let's say, $1 for every hour you read for the first 10 hours. And I'll give you $15 for every hour you read between 10 and 20. Or I'll give you $15 for every hour if you read more than 10. And I'll give you $2, whatever. The next higher dollar amount for every hour you read, if you read more than 20 hours. So what that's doing is it's going and getting you to more. I got to read more. I got to read more. So the idea of the money pledges is a big incentive factor. And this is why if we could go out there, for example, and get a Bill Gates to announce something like that, hey, I'll pledge here to match every dollar that's raised locally up to $1 per hour read, and I'll go and I'll match it 2 to 1 for every dollar that's read or that's pledged more than $2, and so forth and so on. All those things are incentives to encourage the reading. So anyway, I'm going to draw this to a close at this point. There's two things I want you to think about. One is one of the key things we have to do to really get this, when this gets kicked off, we're going to have to find a way that kickoff gets everybody around the world talking about this thing. Forget about who's doing what, but for that Rotary Club to be able to knock on the door of the local school, that's one thing. But if everybody's already talking about it because it's all over the news that somebody's pledging so much amount for every hour somebody reads, and now the Rotary Club knocks on the door of the local school and says, hey, we're going to go and help you contribute a certain amount here, or raise some money and encourage your reading. Let's go and make this happen locally. That's going to help them. If they're just going and the Rotary Club's knocking on the door and what do you want? Here, it's a much more difficult situation than if they're knocking on the door about something that everybody's talking about in the news. So we've got to go out there and try to make it newsworthy at the time this all gets kicked off. Then we've got to go and make sure that somebody follows up. So it's like going out there. I'd hate always bringing these military examples, but it's like going out there and saying you're firing all the artillery to soften up the other side for the infantry. But if the infantry doesn't know that, well, when the artillery stops, we're supposed to go over the hill, then nothing happens. So it was all for naught. So it's the timing has all got to fit together. And then the other thing here is part of our strategy is if we want everybody talking about it, we need to get very influential people to be announcing it and making a big deal of it. So we have to ask ourselves, why would the Secretary General, this I'm going to be putting into a questionnaire a little later today, why would the Secretary General want to help us? Why would he want to help us? Why would the Executive Secretary of UNESCO want to help us? Why would the executives of Rotary International want to help us? Why would the head of a major foundation like the Gates Foundation or a major philanthropist, why would they want to help us? So we've got these different audiences out there. And the idea here is these people don't just go out and do things just for the heck of it. So there's got to be reasons why they would want to get involved, assuming we can get the message to them appropriately. And this is just why we think they would want to get involved with us or encourage this to happen. So I'll be asking that question out there. So we're already over the time. I really wanted to keep this to an hour and 15 minutes and not to an hour and 30. We're over an hour and 30 minutes here. So before I end this here, is there anything, anybody, I'm going to send out some information here further. What are your thoughts here as far as today's meeting, other than the fact that so few people made it?
I feel like even though there weren't as many people in the meeting as we hoped to, I feel like we still accomplished a lot today. And I feel like now after this meeting, I'm more clear on what exactly we're doing in this community, and I could introduce this to other people more better now. So
okay, good. Well, I'm glad that I think is, to me, a very big step, because that's the purpose, is to get everybody here in this committee that cares about this particular initiative to all have that depth of understanding that you're all equally able to go out and explain it to others and encourage others to get engaged and to be able to guide others in that engagement. Leah, any last thoughts from you?
I think it was good to first, even if we were very few, know the people who are in this committee. That's always helpful. And then agree on the goals and clarify the doubts that are less clear in people's minds. Okay.
Thank you. Jerica and Solom, I know you guys are not in a position where you're able to speak, but hopefully you found this interesting. I will post this video so that if you missed parts of it here, I hope you'll go back and look at that. I wish I had time to go through and take out all the ums and ahs, which I find I can usually take out about 20% of most videos where I'm doing a lot of speaking because of that. But I feel this is a good first step. And if we can get others to watch the video from this time, and we'll have our next meeting next week. And hopefully we'll be able to build on this. I will work in the next day or two to get out a questionnaire of these leading questions that we were talking about here, because that does become a way to also get people on the same page. So I thank all of you for participating today. And some of you, I think, are going to be back on at 12 for the Close the Gap initiative. And other than that, I think I'm glad these committees are getting going here. And hopefully within a couple of rounds that you guys are going to be doing even more of the speaking here, because you will have made the philosophy and the strategies and the plans of everything we're talking about your own. And that may mean they're going to change as you get that depth of understanding of this and take it on. You know, the odds are, as we get more people involved, there's going to get new ideas put on the table, and it can go in new directions. And that's perfectly fine, as long as those new directions are not compromising the goals. So thank you very much for your time this morning. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.